Hey, welcome to The Explainer. You've heard of nonprofits, right? Of course. But have you ever gotten totally lost in that alphabet soup of the tax code? You know, the 501c3s, the 501c4s, all those different numbers? Well, today, we're going to crack that code.
I mean, have you ever wondered about that? Why you can get a tax break for donating to your local food bank, but not for giving to that advocacy group you see on TV? Or how some of these nonprofits can be so incredibly political? It all comes down to the deals they make with the IRS, and we're about to lay it all out.
So, here's our game plan. We'll start with a quick tour of the alphabet soup. Then we'll zero in on the big one, the 501c3. After that, we'll look at the political heavy hitters, then the groups that are just for members. And finally, we'll tie it all together to show you why it really truly matters.
Okay, first things first, let's just get a handle on the main players in this whole nonprofit world. Think of this as meeting the cast of characters before the story really kicks off.
This is basically the ultimate cheat sheet.
And you can see the big trade-off right away. Look at that third column. Only one of these, the 501c3, lets your donors get a tax deduction. But, and this is a huge but, look at the last column. In exchange for that tax break, their power to lobby is super limited. The other groups, they give up that tax deduction for a whole lot more freedom. That's the key idea we're going to keep coming back to.
All right, let's dive into the one most of us are familiar with, the 501c3. One source we looked at calls it the king of nonprofits, and honestly, for good reason. It's the standard.
So what makes it the king? Well, at its core, a 501c3 has to be all about serving the general public. We're talking charitable work, education, science, religion, things that benefit everybody, not just a small, private club. That's the whole point. It exists for the public.
And to keep that top-tier status, they have to follow some very strict rules. This is the grand bargain. In exchange for donors getting that tax deduction, the organization has to prove it has broad support, what's called a public support test. It can't just be one rich person's pet project. Its lobbying has to be insubstantial, and that's a key word. And there is a total, absolute ban on getting involved in political campaigns, for or against a candidate. And get this, if the charity ever closes down, the founders can't just walk away with the money. It has to go to another charity.
So that insubstantial lobbying rule is a real problem if your main mission is to get laws changed, right? So what do? Well, this is where you see that great trade-off between pure charity and pure political advocacy really come to life.
And boom, here it is, side by side. The trade-off couldn't be clearer. A 501c4, a social welfare org, makes a huge sacrifice. Donations to it are not tax deductible. So why would anyone do that? For one reason, unlimited lobbying power. Their goal is advocacy. And check out that last line. Unlike a C3, a C4 can be bankrolled by a single mega donor. That's a massive difference.
So you might be thinking, how can an organization get the best of both worlds? Well, a lot of them use this very clever strategy. It's totally legal. First, they set up a 501c3 for all their public education and research. That's where you can send your tax-deductible donation. Then, they create a separate but connected 501c4, sort of like a sister organization or a political arm. That C4 then does all the heavy-duty unlimited lobbying that the C3 is forbidden from even touching. It's a really common way to work the system.
Okay, let's shift gears. So far, we've talked about nonprofits that serve the public in some way, but not all of them do. Some exist simply to benefit their own members, and that's it.
This brings us to the 501c6, the business league. Think of your local chamber of commerce, or a big industry group like a real estate board. Even professional sports leagues often fall into this category. Their goal isn't public charity. It's to help the businesses of their members. And here's a key distinction. A company might be able to deduct its dues as a business expense, but it's not a charitable donation.
Now, this is where it gets a little more pointed. Legal scholar Philip Hackney makes a pretty sharp critique. He says that giving these business leagues a tax exemption is basically a subsidy. It helps amplify the political voice of powerful business interests, which is a very different goal than the public-serving mission of a 501c3. It's a really interesting point to think about.
And then you've got the 501c7, the social club. This one is exactly what it sounds like. It's a group that's organized for fun, pleasure, and recreation. but only for its members. We're talking about country clubs, college fraternities, alumni associations, even your local gardening or model train club. If it's for the members' enjoyment and not to make a profit, it's probably a C7.
So how does the IRS make sure a country club is really a club for its members and not just a restaurant and golf course that's open to the public? Well, they have a pretty clear rule. It all comes down to this number, 15%. Generally speaking, a social club can't make more than 15% of its money from outsiders. Any more than that, and they risk losing their special tax status.
Okay, we've gone through all the different players in our little alphabet soup. Now let's pull the camera back and put all the pieces together, because seeing the whole system is when you really understand why these distinctions have such a huge impact.
So here it is, the whole matrix laid out. And when you see it like this, the patterns just jump out at you. Look down the rows. Who benefits? The public or private members? Are donations deductible? See that one lonely yes for the C3? That one word dictates almost everything else. And look how that decision connects directly to political power. You go from highly restricted to unlimited lobbying to totally prohibited. The whole thing is a carefully balanced system of trade-off.
And that brings us to the most important point of all. Picking a 501c designation isn't just some boring paperwork you file and forget about. No way. It is a fundamental, strategic choice that defines everything about an organization, what it's allowed to do, where it can get its money, and ultimately, how much power it can have.
So I'll leave you with this one big question to think about. When you build a system that gives tax breaks to one kind of group and total political freedom to another, how does that choice, baked right into our tax code, end up shaping whose voice gets heard the loudest in our society? It's the real-world consequence at the very heart of this nonprofit code.